I never thought I would be the kind of man who would find himself in this position. I was always the one who believed in love, in loyalty, in the sanctity of marriage. But that was before I stumbled upon the truth that shattered my world. It was a regular Thursday evening when I returned home from work, exhausted and looking forward to a quiet night with my wife, Emily. The house was dimly lit, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound breaking the silence. I called out to her, expecting her to appear with that warm smile that always melted away my stress. But she didn't come. Instead, I found her phone lying face down on the kitchen counter. My curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up, hesitating for just a moment. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but an inexplicable urge compelled me to unlock it. Her face lit up the screen, and as I scrolled through her messages, my heart sank. There it was, a string of messages that made my blood run cold. Flirtatious banter, heart emojis, and the name that made everything worse, Jake Harrington. Jake Harrington, the actor who had taken Hollywood by storm, the charismatic star whose face adorned every magazine cover. I had watched him in films, admired his talent, even envied his charm. But now that admiration twisted into a knife that plunged deep into my chest. I felt the walls close in around me, the air thick with betrayal. My hands trembled as I set the phone down, my mind racing. How could she do this to me? To us? I stumbled back, leaning against the counter for support. Memories of our life together flashed before my eyes, our wedding day, the laughter we shared, the dreams we built. All of it felt like a cruel joke now. Was I not enough? Did I not give her everything? The trust we had was now a gaping hole, a void that echoed with her infidelity. Anger surged within me, a primal instinct that demanded action. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm brewing inside. I needed to confront her, to hear her explanation, but a part of me hesitated. What if she denied it? What if she had a plausible excuse? My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and heartbreak, but one thing was clear: I would not let this go unanswered. I paced the living room, my thoughts racing. The betrayal stung like 1,000 bee stings, each memory of her smile now tainted with doubt. I had to know more. I had to find out how deep this affair ran. I pulled myself together, my resolve hardening. I would not be the victim in this story. No, I would take control. The thought of revenge crept into my mind, a dark whisper that promised satisfaction. I didn't just want to confront her. I wanted to make him pay for what he had done to me, for what he had done to us. As I stood there, grappling with the tidal wave of emotions, I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could either wallow in pain or take action. I chose the latter. I would find a way to make Jake Harrington suffer professionally for the damage he had caused in my life. The actor had no idea the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface. Little did he know, I was about to turn his world upside down. Before the betrayal, my life with Emily was a tapestry of shared dreams and whispered promises. We met in college, two ambitious souls navigating the chaos of youth. She was the vibrant spark that lit up the dullest of days. With her infectious laughter and radiant smile, she had a way of making the world feel alive. I was captivated, and the moment I laid eyes on her, I knew I wanted to spend my life with her. Our relationship blossomed quickly. We shared late-night talks about our future, the kind of conversations that made you believe in the magic of love. We envisioned a life filled with adventure, a home filled with laughter, and children who would inherit our fiery spirits. After graduation, we married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. It was perfect, just the two of us promising to cherish one another for eternity. In the years that followed, we built a comfortable life together. I worked hard as a marketing executive, climbing the corporate ladder, while Emily pursued her passion for photography. She had an eye for capturing beauty in the mundane, and her work often graced the pages of local magazines. I was proud of her, and we celebrated each other's successes like they were our own. But the years also brought challenges. The pressures of work and life began to wear on us. We had our share of fights, the kind that would leave us both silent and brooding. I would come home late, too tired to engage, and Emily would retreat into her art, her camera becoming her confidant. I thought it was just a phase, that we would find our way back to each other. Then there were the whispers of her dreams, dreams of being part of the art world, of being recognized for her talent. She often spoke of wanting to break into the photography scene in Los Angeles, a city where creativity thrived and opportunities were ripe. I encouraged her, wanting to support her ambitions, even if it meant spending more time apart. But that support came at a cost. As she poured herself into her work, I felt the distance between us grow. We became two ships passing in the night, our once vibrant connection dulled by the monotony of routine. I tried to bridge the gap, but my efforts felt futile. And then came Jake Harrington. I had heard her mention him in passing, a rising star, whose charisma was infectious. She had attended a gallery opening where he was present, and I brushed it off as harmless admiration. After all, he was just a man, an actor who played a role. How could he possibly compare to the love we had built together? But as I stood in the kitchen, staring at her phone, it became painfully clear that I had underestimated the situation. Emily's messages to him were not just innocent exchanges. They were intimate, charged with a chemistry that I could not compete with. The very thought of her being with someone like him, someone who lived a life of glamour and excitement, made my heart ache with jealousy. As I reflected on our life, I couldn't help but wonder if I had failed her. Had I not given her the attention she craved? Had I not been the partner she needed? The more I thought about it, the more anger bubbled beneath the surface. I had poured my heart and soul into our marriage, only to find it crumbling at the hands of a man who had everything I lacked: fame, charm, and the ability to make her feel alive in a way I no longer could. I realized then that this was not just a betrayal of love, it was a betrayal of everything we had built together. I couldn't let it go unpunished. The thought of revenge began to take shape, an insidious plan that whispered promises of satisfaction. I had to act, to take control of the narrative that had spiraled out of my grasp. Jake Harrington would pay for the pain he had inflicted on me. I would ensure that his career suffered, that he felt the weight of my betrayal. But as I plotted my course, a nagging voice in the back of my mind reminded me of the love I still had for Emily. She was not just a pawn in this game. She was the woman I had loved for years. Would my actions bring her back to me, or would they push her further away? The line between love and revenge began to blur, and I was left with a decision that would change everything. The days that followed my discovery were a haze of anger, confusion, and determination. I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of Emily and Jake. Each time I closed my eyes, I was haunted by images of them together, her laughter, her touch, the way she looked at him with eyes full of adoration. I felt like a ghost in my own life, a mere spectator to the betrayal unraveling before me. But amidst the chaos of emotions, a plan began to form. I knew I had to act, and it had to be calculated. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and I wanted to savor every moment of it. I needed to make Jake Harrington suffer, not just for the sake of my pride, but to reclaim my own sense of agency in this situation. I would not be a victim. I would be the architect of my own salvation. My initial thoughts revolved around his career. How could I undermine a man who seemed untouchable? Jake was a rising star, and the industry was his playground. But every empire has its weak points. I started to research, digging into his recent projects and public appearances, looking for any cracks I could exploit. It was in this pursuit that I stumbled upon a golden opportunity. Jake was set to star in a highly anticipated blockbuster, a film that had been generating buzz long before its release. It was his biggest role yet, a chance to solidify his status as a leading man. The film was backed by a major studio, and its success depended heavily on public perception. That was my entry point. I began to gather information, piecing together a web of connections and potential allies. I reached out to old contacts from my marketing days, people who had a finger on the pulse of the entertainment industry. I positioned myself as a concerned insider, speaking of ethics and integrity, and how the public deserved to know the truth about the man behind the charming facade. I crafted a narrative that painted Jake as untrustworthy, a man who exploited the vulnerabilities of others for his own gain. I began feeding this story to entertainment blogs and gossip sites, planting seeds of doubt about his character. I knew it would take time, but the more I spread the word, the more it would grow. But I wasn't just relying on whispers and rumors. I wanted to ensure that the studio felt the pressure. I learned about the film's premiere and the media frenzy that would surround it. If I could create enough controversy leading up to the event, it could jeopardize the film's success and, in turn, Jake's career. I reached out to journalists, posing as a source close to the project, dropping hints about Jake's alleged indiscretions. As I executed my plan, I felt a sense of exhilaration mixed with trepidation. There were moments when I wondered if I was crossing a line, if I was becoming the very monster I despised. But with each message I sent, each article I influenced, the anger that had fueled my actions drowned out any lingering guilt. This was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and taking back what had been stolen from me. Yet, even as I reveled in my newfound purpose, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that my actions would have consequences beyond my control. What would happen to Emily if she found out what I was doing? Would my plan push her further into Jake's arms, or would it force her to confront the reality of her choices? As I sat alone in my dimly lit living room, the weight of my decisions settled heavily on my shoulders. I was no longer just a husband seeking revenge. I was a man on a mission, teetering on the edge of a moral abyss. The thrill of plotting Jake's downfall was intoxicating, but I knew that with every step I took, I was also moving further away from the man I once was. But I had made my choice. I would see this through to the end. I would ensure that Jake Harrington paid for the betrayal he had inflicted upon my life. And as I prepared to unleash my plan, I couldn't help but wonder if I was ready for the storm that was about to unfold. The thrill of revenge coursed through my veins like an intoxicating drug. As I delved deeper into my plan, I found myself becoming more methodical, more ruthless. I had mapped out a strategy, and now it was time to execute it. The film premiere was just weeks away, and I could feel the clock ticking. I had to act quickly. I started by solidifying my connections within the industry. I reached out to a few journalists I had worked with in the past, people who knew how to spin a story to capture the public's attention. I presented myself as a concerned insider, someone who had witnessed the darker side of Hollywood. I fed them snippets of information about Jake's alleged infidelities and his questionable behavior on set. I crafted my narrative carefully, ensuring it was believable enough to spark interest without sounding like a bitter husband seeking revenge. One particular journalist, Sarah, had a reputation for breaking scandalous stories. I had worked with her before, and I knew she had an appetite for controversy. I arranged a meeting under the guise of discussing a new marketing campaign I was involved in. As we chatted over coffee, I subtly dropped hints about Jake's off-screen behavior, rumors of late-night escapades, and a growing reputation for being difficult to work with. I could see the spark of intrigue in her eyes as she leaned in closer, eager for more. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her pen poised over her notepad. "This could be a huge story." I nodded, feigning a casual demeanor. I wouldn't say anything unless I had credible sources, but I think the public deserves to know the truth about the man behind the glitz and glamour. With that, I had set the wheels in motion. Sarah promised to look into it, and I left the meeting feeling exhilarated. I knew that if I could get her to bite, the story would spread like wildfire. The media loved a scandal, and Jake Harrington was about to become the centerpiece of a narrative that would tarnish his reputation. As the days went by, I continued to feed information to various outlets, each article building on the last. The whispers grew louder, and soon, Jake found himself in the crosshairs of public scrutiny. Social media exploded with speculation, and the buzz around his upcoming film began to sour. I watched from the sidelines, a mix of satisfaction and anxiety churning within me. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to a few industry insiders I had met through networking events. I presented myself as someone looking to protect the integrity of the film industry, someone who valued authenticity over celebrity. I shared my concerns about Jake's behavior, framing it as a potential liability for the studio. The more I discussed it, the more I could see the wheels turning in their heads. I knew that if I could plant enough seeds of doubt, it could lead to Jake being sidelined or even replaced. My heart raced at the thought. It was a risky move, but the potential payoff was too great to ignore. As the premiere approached, I felt a sense of urgency. I needed to escalate my efforts. I decided to attend the premiere myself. It would be the perfect opportunity to see my plan unfold in real time. I bought a ticket under the guise of being a fan, but my real intention was to observe the chaos I had orchestrated. The night of the premiere arrived, and I donned a carefully chosen outfit, blending in with the crowd while keeping my heart steady. As I mingled among the attendees, I could feel the tension in the air. The media was buzzing with questions about Jake's recent controversies, and I could see the way it affected him as he arrived on the red carpet. His usual charm was replaced with a forced smile, the weight of the world seemingly resting on his shoulders. I watched as reporters bombarded him with questions, their cameras flashing like lightning. "What do you have to say about the rumors surrounding your personal life?" one asked, thrusting a microphone into his face. Jake's composure faltered for a brief moment, and I reveled in the sight. But amidst the excitement, I noticed Emily in the crowd. She had come to support Jake, her eyes shining with admiration as she watched him navigate the media frenzy. My heart twisted at the sight of her, torn between the love I once had for her and the anger that fueled my actions. I was reminded of the life we had built together, the dreams we had shared. As I stood there, witnessing the fallout of my actions, I realized that my quest for revenge came with a steep price. I was not just dismantling Jake's career, I was also risking my relationship with Emily. Would she understand my motivations if she found out? Would she see me as the villain in this story? But I pushed those thoughts aside. This was about more than just her. It was about reclaiming my dignity and ensuring that the man who had betrayed me felt the repercussions of his actions. I could not turn back now. As the night unfolded, I could see the cracks forming in Jake's facade. The whispers grew louder and the media frenzy escalated. I felt a surge of triumph. My plan was working and I was about to witness the fruits of my labor. But in the back of my mind, a question lingered. Was this revenge truly worth the cost? The aftermath of the premiere was a whirlwind. I watched as the media storm intensified, each article more damning than the last. Jake Harrington, once the darling of Hollywood, was now drowning in a sea of scandal and speculation. The whispers I had carefully planted had blossomed into a full-blown narrative that painted him as untrustworthy and unreliable, a man whose charm masked a darker reality. The studio quickly issued a statement, expressing concern over the allegations and promising to investigate. I felt a rush of satisfaction as I read the headlines, each one echoing the chaos I had orchestrated. My heart raced with a mixture of triumph and dread. I had succeeded in my mission, but at what cost? As Jake's career began to falter, the repercussions seeped into my life like poison. Emily had been ecstatic about the film's premiere, but as the news unfolded, her excitement transformed into confusion and concern. I could see the worry etched on her face as she scrolled through her phone, reading the articles that painted Jake in an unflattering light. "Did you see this?" she asked, her voice shaky as she turned to me. "They're saying he might be replaced in the film. This is so unfair." Her concern for him stung like 1,000 needles. I forced a smile, masking the turmoil within me. It's the price of fame, I guess. People love a scandal. But deep down, I felt a pang of guilt. I had orchestrated this chaos, and now I was watching it unfold through the eyes of the woman I loved. Emily had always admired Jake's talent, and I couldn't help but wonder if my actions would drive her closer to him in her desire to defend him. As the days turned into weeks, the situation escalated. Jake was pulled from promotional events, and the studio began to distance itself from him. I reveled in the news, my heart swelling with a sense of justice. But each time I saw Emily's worried expression, the weight of my actions pressed down harder. I found myself at a crossroads. I had achieved what I set out to do, but the victory felt hollow. My relationship with Emily began to fray, the connection we once had overshadowed by the dark cloud of my revenge. I could see her frustration growing, and she started to withdraw into herself. "Why are you acting this way?" she asked one night, her voice tinged with confusion and hurt. "You seem different. It's like you're celebrating something terrible." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain the depths of my actions without revealing the truth? Instead, I deflected, trying to maintain a facade of indifference. "It's just Hollywood drama. It happens all the time." But that wasn't the truth. I was the puppet master pulling the strings, and I could feel the consequences of my actions reverberating through our lives. I watched as Emily's admiration for Jake morphed into a sense of guilt, a feeling that she was somehow complicit in the chaos. One evening, as I lay awake in bed, I overheard her talking on the phone, her voice barely above a whisper. She was speaking to someone about Jake, expressing her concern for him, her heart aching at the thought of his career crumbling. I felt a surge of anger and jealousy wash over me. She was still emotionally tethered to him, and I was the one who had driven a wedge between us. As I listened, I realized that my revenge had not only hurt Jake, it was tearing apart the very foundation of my marriage. I had become the villain in my own story, and the consequences of my actions were far-reaching. The thrill of revenge that once fueled me began to fade, replaced by a gnawing sense of regret. I tried to confront my feelings, but every time I looked at Emily, I was reminded of the betrayal that had sparked this chain of events. I was caught in a web of my own making, and I could feel the threads tightening around me. One night, unable to contain my frustration any longer, I confronted Emily. "Why do you care so much about him?" I snapped, my voice rising. "He's the one who betrayed our marriage." She turned to me, her eyes wide with hurt. "I care because he's a human being, and what's happening to him is awful. I didn't ask for any of this." Her words stung, and I felt the walls closing in. I had become so consumed by my desire for revenge that I had lost sight of the woman I loved. The anger that had driven me began to fester into something darker, despair. As Jake's career continued to spiral, I felt the weight of my actions bearing down on me. I had achieved my goal, but the victory was bittersweet. I had not only destroyed a man's career, I had jeopardized my own marriage. Emily was slipping away from me, and I could feel the distance growing. The consequences of my revenge were more severe than I had ever anticipated. I was left with a choice: to continue down this path of destruction, or to find a way to rebuild what I had lost. But the question lingered: was it too late to save my marriage, or had I already crossed a line from which there was no return? As the dust settled from the chaos I had unleashed, I found myself standing at the precipice of my own despair. The thrill of revenge that had once consumed me had transformed into a heavy burden I could no longer bear. I watched as Emily withdrew further into herself, her concern for Jake turning into a silent reproach against me. Each day felt like an uphill battle, and the weight of my actions pressed down on my chest like a leaden weight. I had been so focused on making Jake Harrington pay for his betrayal that I had lost sight of the most important thing in my life: Emily. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the confusion that stemmed from my actions, and it shattered me to my core. I had become the villain in a story that had once been filled with love and promise. One evening, after a particularly tense day, I found Emily sitting on the couch, her gaze fixed on the television but her mind clearly elsewhere. I felt the urge to reach out to her to bridge the chasm I had created, but the words felt stuck in my throat. Instead, I sat down beside her, the silence between us heavy with unspoken feelings. "Emily," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I need to talk to you." She turned to me, her eyes searching mine for answers. "What's there to talk about? You've made your feelings pretty clear." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my guilt pressing down on me. "I know I've been distant, and I know it's because of what I did. I thought I was protecting us, but I see now that I was only hurting you." Her expression softened slightly, but the pain was still evident. "You don't understand how much this has affected me. I cared about Jake as a person, and seeing his career fall apart, it's heartbreaking. You didn't just hurt him, you hurt me." "I didn't think about that," I admitted, my voice trembling. I was so consumed by anger and betrayal that I lost sight of the bigger picture. I thought if I made him suffer, it would somehow make me feel better, but all it did was tear us apart. I watched as her walls began to crack, the hurt she had been holding onto bubbling to the surface. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said softly, tears welling in her eyes. "You made a choice that changed everything." "I knows," I replied, my heart aching. "I can't take back what I did, but I can try to make it right. I need to fix this, Emily. I need to prove to you that I still love you and that I want to be the man you deserve." She looked at me for a long moment, weighing my words. "How can you fix this? How can you undo the damage?" "I'll end this," I said, my voice steadying. "I'll reach out to the journalists, to the people I've influenced, and I'll tell them the truth. I'll make it clear that it was wrong to spread those rumors. I'll take responsibility for my actions, no matter the consequences." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You do that for him." "For you," I corrected, "because I can't stand the thought of losing you over something I did out of spite. I want to be better, and I want to show you that I can be the man you fell in love with." The tears streamed down her cheeks as she processed my words. "I don't know if it will be enough," she whispered, her voice trembling, "but I appreciate you saying that." I reached for her hand and she hesitated before taking it. "It's a start, right?" I asked, desperate for a glimmer of hope. "It is," she replied, her voice softening. "But it's going to take time. I need to see that you mean it." "I will show you," I promised, squeezing her hand gently. "I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild our trust. I'm done being the man I was. I want to be the husband you deserve." In the following days, I set my plan into motion. I contacted the journalists I had manipulated, reaching out to Sarah first. I explained the situation, admitted my role in the scandal, and urged her to retract the statements that had led to Jake's downfall. I could feel the weight of my confession pressing down on me, but I knew it was necessary. As I reached out to others, I faced mixed reactions. Some were understanding, while others were skeptical. But I persisted, determined to right the wrongs I had committed. It was a long, arduous process, and there were moments when I felt like giving up. But the thought of Emily's hurt pushed me forward. Eventually, the tide began to turn. As the truth emerged, the rumors surrounding Jake began to fade, and the studio announced that they would still move forward with the film. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but it was bittersweet. I had freed Jake from the shackles of my revenge, but I knew that my actions had left scars. As I sat down to talk to Emily after everything had settled, I could see the flicker of hope in her eyes. "Thank you for doing this," she said quietly, her voice tinged with cautious optimism. "It means a lot to me." "It's the least I could do," I replied, my heart swelling with a mix of love and remorse. "I'm sorry for everything. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." The road ahead was uncertain, but we had taken the first step toward healing. I had learned that revenge could never fill the void left by betrayal. It only deepened the wounds and threatened to destroy everything I held dear. As I looked into Emily's eyes, I realized that love was not just about passion and shared dreams. It was also about understanding, forgiveness, and the willingness to confront the darkest parts of ourselves. I knew that we had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time I felt hopeful. Together, we could rebuild what had been lost, and perhaps we could emerge from the shadows stronger than ever. And as I held her close, I vowed to never let anger cloud my judgment again. I would cherish our love, for it was the only thing that truly mattered in the end. The journey to healing had begun, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next.